A big thank you to Capital.com, who have been sponsoring our podcast for the past 4 months. Capital.com is a global investment platform with over 500,000 people trading on its platform. If you are looking to take advantage of opportunities in the market, if you're looking to trade shares, commodities, or even crypto now that Bitcoin is nearing $60,000, check out Capital.com's website and start your trading journey today.
I think all of the people that have really managed to succeed, however you define that in their lives, have aspired to be them. There is no, our generation have a tendency to confuse our admiration for what someone has done with our aspirations for ourselves. And there is no way that I could be any of the people that I admire. There's no way I could be any of them. I don't have their trauma. I didn't have their parents. I don't have their DNA. So although I can be inspired by them, the only great person I'm capable of becoming is the very best version of Steven Bartlett.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Conversations with Loulou. On Feb 4, 2024, I led a fireside chat with Steven Bartlett, the host of the Diary of a CEO podcast, to a packed room at the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival. Steven is a celebrity. He is an entrepreneur, an investor, an author, and a thought leader. We discuss Steven's perspectives on fame, on learning, on leadership, and building businesses and teams. There are so many gems in the next 45 minutes, and I really hope that you enjoy listening to this podcast and learning from Steven as much as I did. So here it is, uncut, live from Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival, Conversations with Loulou, episode 69. Welcome, Steven.
Thank you for having me again. It's great to be back here. Thank you.
So before we get started, I'll just take a minute to introduce myself and a quick intro about Steven, even though he needs no introduction. Briefly, my name is Loulou Khazen. I am an entrepreneur. I have been living here in the UAE for 21 years. 15 years ago, I started building my own business, and I've helped countless other entrepreneurs build their businesses as well. And I have fallen in love with the startup ecosystem, with entrepreneurship, with the energy that founders typically have when building their businesses. And I have dedicated the past 4 years in making the startup ecosystem in this part of the world more mainstream and more accessible. And I do that in 2 ways. The first way is through my podcast, Conversations with Loulou, which is a top 10 business and entrepreneurship podcast, where I interview the region's top voices on entrepreneurship and technology and business in the hopes of inspiring a lot of people, to get in on the action and do something interesting. And the second way I contribute to the startup ecosystem is through Spade Ventures, which is an investment network that helps executives and people interested to be part of the startup community to invest in these startups in early stage tech companies. And Steven, you are incredibly special. I got to know you through your podcast, The Diary of a CEO, which is wildly successful. And I also got to know more about you as I read your book and listened to some of the podcasts where you were an interviewee, and learned that you are a contrarian entrepreneur. You've built several businesses. You are an author of 2 books, Happy Sexy Millionaire and The Diary of a CEO. You are an investor through Dragon's Den and through your own private equity fund, which is Flight Fund. And you are a global speaker on wellness and technology and Web3. So I'm super excited to get the chance to talk to you for the next 40 minutes and get a glimpse into your mind in terms of how you view your brand, entrepreneurship, and also get some learnings from your podcast. Would you like to say anything to your fans before you get started?
I just hope that you find value in something we discussed today, and thank you all for being here and giving us your time. So I'm hoping to repay it with something of value. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So I thought to start by letting you know that every week at 7 a.m. in the morning, you're in my ears when I'm doing the thing that I love doing the most, which is running.
Oh, wow.
And I feel so happy because I know that you've done so much work to bring in some of the best speakers and to give us insights to make us, a better version of ourselves. And people develop a relationship with you, right? Albeit one-sided. So there's millions of people out there downloading your podcast and they really love you. So how do you deal with all this love from all these millions of people around the world?
I think generally in life, so this is interesting. You've got to be careful about accepting admiration, because if you open the door to applause, you also open the door to boos in the same way. And I think both as a CEO, but also if you become sort of a public figure, you have to find ways to develop your own calm within the chaos. And if you run a business, you'll know this better than anybody. So running a business where we had 500 employees, I learned firsthand that I can't get too carried away with the highs, and in doing so, you choose not to get carried away with the lows. And that's what I mean. It's like your own calm within the chaos. And it's the same now. Like we do about 50 million monthly downloads on the show. That's a lot of people around the world that are listening to you for 1 or 2 hours at a time. And also being on Dragon's Den, that means that the UK is not the biggest island in the world. That means that the newspapers want to talk about you a lot. Every time the show's on, there's 50 articles about you, and they're all looking for a different angle on you. My strategy, frankly, is to basically ignore all of it. So if someone tags me on social media, I won't see it. I've not searched my name on the internet for maybe 3 years now. If you tweet me, I probably won't see the tweet because I have no notifications, so I don't see any of it. And I do this because I'm trying to hone in on what's important, and I'm trying to make sure distraction doesn't sway me off course. And it's not possible to do anything really in life without getting both sides of the extreme feedback. You're the worst person to ever live. You are the best person to ever live. I don't think either are that useful. I think what's really useful is me staying as in tune with my girlfriend as I possibly can, and my best friends and my team and my family. I think they're going to give me really valuable feedback and steer me. But everything else I consider to be not as useful. And the reason why this is complicated and it's nuanced, because it doesn't mean that you don't listen to the outside world. It's that you do your very best to focus on a center point of useful feedback. And also, it doesn't mean that you're not tremendously honored and fueled by the random messages that get through to you when you're walking down the street. They mean so much to me, and they turn me in really profound ways. But generally, if you want to be healthy, you've got to find systems. And I say this to a lot of people who end up popping up in public culture because they go on Dragon's Den and then they get gazillions of messages. You have to find ways to create calm in your chaos. The world we live in isn't natural. It's not natural for millions of people to be able to message you at once with their opinion of you on a Sunday morning while you're sat having a date with your girlfriend. It's not natural. And so you've got to try and bring it back to, maybe our prehistoric times where you just had your tribe. And I do my very best to do that.
So building on that, you talk a lot about authenticity, and you're quite authentic yourself. You've shared a lot about your personal story. So do you draw the line at some point where you say, okay, I can share something about myself, but then, at some point it could get intrusive, or it gets to you or bothers you?
Yeah, I try not to bring in anyone else's business without permission as much as I can.
Okay.
However, I realized very early on from doing the podcast, maybe in the first 3 or 4 episodes, that the more open and vulnerable I was about the things I was dealing with, the better it was for me and my mind, and the better it was for the listener. Because it turns out that the thing that's in least supply in the world of content and just in the world generally is people willing to be honest. But the thing that's in highest demand is people willing to be honest. And if I invert that, if I say the thing that's in most supply is people showing you quite a one-dimensional perspective of themselves, typically a perspective that makes them look exceptional. But that's not what we relate to. That's not the 99% of our lives. The 99% of our lives is worry, anxiety, problems, dealing with things in our relationships, struggles. That's the thing that we're desperately in search of answers of. But the supply, in terms of content, isn't that. The supply is, look at me having a margarita in Hawaii. That's not the thing we can relate to. And I learned this lesson very early on, that the bridge to connection for all of us is vulnerability. It's opening up and it's being willing to share those struggles. It's not a repellent, it's a magnet. And it's a magnet if you're a leader, if you're a podcaster, if you're a content creator, if you're an entrepreneur. If you want to bring people to you, if you want to bring set down the walls of ego and pride and form bonds, vulnerability is the way to do that. And it turns out it's not just a great tactic for connection, it's great for you. It's great for me. It's great that on my podcast, people know me because on my podcast, I am me. And it also means that it's like public therapy for me. I don't store many problems, you know?
Do you recommend that for business leaders, for entrepreneurs? I mean, you're a content creator.
It's again, these things are all very nuanced. So I can't really ever say yes to everything. What you don't want to do, because in leadership, your mood is contagious. They've done multiple studies where they show that stress is contagious in an organization, but it typically comes from the leader. It typically comes from the manager of the team. So this is, again, quite a nuanced point in the sense that one neuroscientist on my podcast showed that stress literally leaks through the pores of your skin, and it can literally infect other people. So just pretending you're not stressed isn't enough. Because like pheromones and other hormones, you do actually radiate onto other people. So it's important to genuinely take care of your stress. On the other side of the coin, you don't want to come into an organization and offload onto people, because that will have a really profound impact. What you do want to do in moments of tremendous difficulty, the pandemic was one of them for most of the world, is emphasize with how your team are feeling. Remarkable leaders are able to do that. They're able to walk in the room and say, I know we're feeling this. I feel the same way. Come with me. Here's the answer. And you're able to lead if you're able to emphasize with people. So, yeah.
Well, you're a role model to a lot of people. And I would imagine a lot of young men would want to be like you. Happy, sexy millionaire, right?
Well, you know, it's interesting because I wrote that as the title of my book because at 18 years old, when I dropped out of university, it is what I wrote in the first page of my diary, pretty much. When my friend of mine gave me this diary. I was 18, literally shoplifting food to feed myself, and he gave me this diary, and in the first page, I wrote, my goals before I'm 25. And remember, no money, CCJs, parents not talking to me, have left university in the worst part of the city in Manchester, working in call centres. I wrote, my goals before I'm 25. A Range Rover Sport will be my first car. I'll make £1 million before I'm 25. I'm going to work. I wrote work on my body image. What I meant was six-pack. And the fourth one was have a relationship, because I didn't have a girlfriend until I was about 26 or so, 27, talk about 25. Those are my 4 goals in life. I wanted to be a happy, sexy millionaire. I thought if I achieved those things, if I got the Range Rover, the £1 million and the six-pack, I was done. And then by 25 years old, my first car is a Range Rover Sport. I'm a multi-millionaire. I've got a girlfriend. Six-packs are quite the debate. You know, some days are better than others. But I got it, and it just wasn't it, unsurprisingly. And that's why I wrote that as the title of my book, because I was trying to mousetrap all the people like me that have wrote something similar in their own diary. And by putting that as the cover of the book, it is a mousetrap. Most people don't even read books. They just take a photo of the front cover. I was hoping to pull those people in as a trap, and then in the first pages of it, it says I made this mistake too, and take them on a journey of figuring out a better set of goals to write in their diary. But when I do interviews, a lot of press like to say, here he comes, happy, sexy millionaire. And it makes me seem like a bit of a narcissist. But I guess that's the price you have to pay.
See, which 21-year-old doesn't want to be a happy, sexy millionaire? Let's face it.
Yeah, it's true.
But really, I mean, what do you want, like, young people that look up to you and aspire to become you? Like, what do you want them to learn from you?
I think it's important not to aspire to be me. I think all of the people that have really managed to succeed, however you define that in their lives, have aspired to be them. There is no... our generation have a tendency to confuse our admiration for what someone has done with our aspirations for ourselves. And there is no way that I could be any of the people that I admire. There's no way I could be any of them. I don't have their trauma. I didn't have their parents. I don't have their DNA. So although I can be inspired by them, the only great person I'm capable of becoming is the very best version of Steven Bartlett. You know, and I realized that early on because we're all so and you learn this from doing a podcast and interviewing people, that the things that are driving us, our perspective on the world, it starts at, some people would argue it starts in the womb. We're learning a lot of lessons in the womb from our parents, the way we inherit our gut microbiome and the gut-brain connection. It's impossible to be anybody else. And so that would be my advice to you, which is don't have an aspiration to be me. You will be a great person that people look up to and admire if you pursue yourself. And then there'll be this whole host of people that want to be you. They'll make the same mistake. And you should turn back to them and say, listen, the only great person you can be is to be yourself. And that means pursuing yourself in every regard. Pursuing your potential, your interest, your curiosity, which no one can replicate in every regard. So, yeah.
There's a famous Oscar Wilde quote that says, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." So I guess it
is like really fundamentally true.
Yeah.
And I think I struggled in the early part of my career because I was like, I'm going to be Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm not Steve Jobs. I didn't go to design school. I'm not interested in typography like that guy was. My brain isn't traumatized in the same way that Steve Jobs' brain is traumatized. I don't have the core components of being Steve Jobs. I have the core components of learning lessons from Steve Jobs and implementing that in my own pursuit, but I can't be him in any regard. And an attempt to do so would most certainly result in failure and some form of mediocrity or inadequacy. The only thing that can make me truly great is pursuing myself. And that's what I really try and do every day.
And you talk about this in your latest book, The Diary of a CEO. You talk about the self-story that you tell yourself, right? So how that shapes your life and shapes what you end up doing. So at what point did you think, because when you became an entrepreneur, when you started a business, you had a marketing agency and social media, you were helping other people. At what point did you think, I'm going to become the brand, I'm going to be the sort of the center of all of that?
Yeah, I think that there's an old adage, isn't there, that people buy from people. And what the internet did is it tore down the gatekeepers of communication and media from the past, where to get your message out there once upon a time, you had to hope that a radio station or a TV network or a newspaper wrote about you. And the advent of the internet meant that we all became media companies just by this thing in the palm of our hands. And that meant that we could all publish. And if you knew the rules of social media and communication and storytelling, you could build your own stage, your own media company using the device in your hand. I realized that pretty early on, and when there was about 20 or 30 people in my company, I hired a videographer to follow me every day. And I started writing and publishing on social media. And yeah, I just think it's pretty crazy that more people don't do that. Not even for the pursuit of building an audience, but the pursuit of personal development itself, because there's nothing that has moved me forward intellectually in my own life with some of the challenges and troubles I have in my life than writing every day and publishing. Richard Feynman, who I think is one of the sort of leading physicists and thinkers of our time, says that if you want to accelerate your learning, you have to create an obligation to teach others. The people that learn the most in any classroom aren't the students, they're the teachers. And if the process of learning something goes something like this in Richard Feynman's Feynman technique, which I've modified a little bit, is you learn something, which could be you walking down the street and someone comes up to you and they say something rude to you. That's a moment where you've learned something about the world. You then try and take the thing you've learned and reduce it down to the understanding of a 10-year-old. You simplify it. The definition and evidence that you truly understand something is your ability to simplify the thing, and then you try and communicate the thing you've learned to others. And if those people understand what you've said, right, that means that you understand it. If they don't understand what you've said, you go back to learning it, you simplify it, and then you try and teach it to others again. That is what content creation is. That is what me writing quotes that I posted on my Instagram is. It's the process of me going through something in my day with my girlfriend, me then going online and having 140 characters on Twitter back in the day that I had to turn it into a learning, and I'd write something like, if we're dating, I want to be your second priority. I want your first priority to be you, your life, and your future, because if we're happy alone, we'll be happy together. That came from an argument I had with my girlfriend. I posted it as a tweet, took it, posted it on Instagram. The world reacts. It goes viral. If you search that exact thing, you'll see people saying that exact quote, I'm going to say 100 times a month on Twitter to this day, because it resonated with people. And I go, okay, there's a simplified truth there. I did that for about 7 years every day at 8 p.m. So you can understand how much I learned from the everyday experiences I had. It's one of the most important things for personal and self-development is you go through your day, take log of the things that happen somewhere in your notes, on Evernote, wherever you want to do it, try and turn it into a lesson and try and give it to the world. And the world will give you feedback, and then you go back to the top of that technique. So yeah, it's so important. I don't think people think in order to like progress your own intellectual capacity, you have to like go to university, you have to take a course. What you actually have to do is garner more wisdom from your everyday experiences, more introspection, more journaling, and you can accelerate the amount of intellect that you garner from 24 hours more so than everybody else. I think if you just did that, in about 5 years' time, it would appear that you've lived 15 years more than everybody else. Because I'm not a prolific reader. I don't read books, really. Didn't go to university, dropped out of school. So where have I got what I know from? Well, I've got it from like rapid introspection, so.
But it's not, I mean, as you said earlier, right, each one has their own traumas, genetics, and story, right? So you talk a bit about dropping out of university. It's not really for everybody, though, is it?
University's certainly not. And, it's interesting. When I talk about getting kicked out of school, dropping out of university, people assume that I'm not a fan of education. I'm the biggest fan of education. University and school is one vehicle or mechanism of education. I self-educate, whether it's through journaling, or whether it's through podcasting, whether it's through watching YouTube. And I think education is incredibly important. As I say in the first law of my book, you've got to fill your 5 buckets in life in the right order. And when I'm referring to 5 buckets, it's in essence, if you fill these 5 buckets, then the world becomes your oyster. And the first bucket is your knowledge. And you have to fill them in the right order, because if you try and cheat the system, life will bring you back down to the level of your knowledge and skills. Bucket number 1 is your knowledge, what you know. Bucket number 2 is what you can do. And that's the application of your knowledge. When you learn something and you apply it, it becomes a skill. These are the first 2 buckets that no professional earthquake can ever unfill. No one can ever take away your knowledge and skills. The third bucket is your resources, which is typically what you get when you have advanced knowledge and skills. The 4th bucket is your network, which is who you know. And the 5th bucket is what the world thinks of you, which is your reputation. Those last 3 buckets the world can empty. They can decide to knock them over, take away your resources, take away your network, take away your reputation. They can never unfill your knowledge and skills. And so the best investment any of us can make is in our knowledge and skills. And that's why I'm the biggest fan in the world of education. But education isn't school, because I couldn't last in school. I couldn't pay attention in a lesson for more than 10 minutes. I was really nice to the teachers, but I also slept through their entire lessons. I wouldn't hand in my homework. I've been back to speak at the school twice now. GCSE evening, the A-levels evening. And they say, Steve, you still owe us homework. Mrs. Birchnell came up to me and she goes, you were a useless student, but you were nice, but you were useless. And it just wasn't for me. And when I went to university, I went to one lecture and I was like, oh, this isn't like the movies in America. This is more school. And I never went back. So, yeah.
Well, there is hope to everybody who wants to drop out of university. You can turn out to be great. So,
yeah,
it's not only in the classroom. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Mm-hmm. So, let's talk a little bit about your business, like your entrepreneurship journey. So, I feel like you come across from your podcast. I mean, I don't know you, but you come across as someone that puts a lot of intention into what you do. Like, even though you talk a lot about experimentation, but I feel like you plan things. And I wanted to ask you, are you like the type of person who's, naturally gifted, passionate, lucky, things happen to you, or is it more, sheer determination and kind of like drive to get to where you are today?
It's hard to know. I think we all have different levels of privilege and fortune. My greatest privilege was born in Africa, had 2 parents that loved me. We moved to the UK, and we lived in an economy and a society where we got free education, and I had parents that kept a roof over my head. That's like my greatest fundamental privilege. And then there's a lot of mistakes that my parents made that are also part of my great fundamental privileges. The fact that by the age of about 10 years old, being the youngest of 4 kids, my parents basically stopped coming home. My mum decided to start a corner shop, and in doing so, because she was broken into so often because she was black, she decided to sleep in the corner shop after she'd finished her shift. So that meant at 10 years old, the parents kind of assume they've parented all the kids, and I get this huge amount of independence, where if I don't go to school, it doesn't matter, because when the school call, I'm picking up the phone, and I'm doing my dad's voice. Hello, he's not at school. So and what happens in that void of independence, which we sometimes think of a parental mistake, is you give a kid a lot of chance to learn about the world and to experiment. And the other part of the context there is because we were pretty much the only black family, definitely in our area, pretty much in the school, was I had a huge amount of shame. I was trying to be my rich white friends, desperately. Huge amount of independence, huge amount of shame. You start conducting experiments. Started selling things, started selling all of the cigarettes in my mum's back cupboard that she bought from Nigeria. They just went one packet at a time. She had no idea where they went until all 7 bin bags had just vanished. And I started experimenting, and experimentation is the path to knowledge because, you fail, failure is feedback, and feedback is knowledge, and knowledge is your power. So that's really one of my biggest gifts, was that my parents stopped coming home. And in that, I could figure out the world for myself.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's a mix.
It's a mix, yeah, for sure.
So with regards to your businesses, you've built several businesses. You have businesses in Web3, in media, in wellness, a podcaster, tour, books. How does it all come together in your mind? Like, what's the ideation process? How do you know what's next?
So at the moment, I'm building something called Flight Group, which we've not really announced to the world yet, and it's probably about two and a half weeks from being announced to the world. And within the Flight Group, you have Flight Story, which is my marketing business, which is around the world, about 120 people. You have Flight Media, which is I have a publication business which publishes books. Penguin do the distribution. We 100% own the company, but we sign up great authors now. We have our podcast. We have our studio business, which is doing really well, and we've got some announcements coming on that at the moment. We have the technology business called Flight Tech, where I've got things like ThirdWeb and a bunch of other tools we've built. We have my Flight Fund, which is a $100 million venture fund. Danny over here leads the fund, and we invest in great companies from around the world. And then we have my Flight Ventures business, where I've got about 40 investments I've made, typically smaller investments. Some of them come from Dragon's Den that are really broad and holistic. And I'm really focused on building this Flight Group and really adding meaning to the word flight. In the same way that I guess like Richard Branson built the Virgin Group, and I know what he did there and how he did that, and I'm really inspired by that. So that's really my next 10 or 20 years. The key to doing this, though, and this is a bit of a paradox. If I was at the start of my career, I wouldn't advise people to do that. If I was at the start of my career, I'd advise you to focus. And once you've focused enough that you build enough resources and fill those 5 buckets that I talk about, you have reputational leverage, you have resources that you can invest in people and teams, etc. You have knowledge and skills. Then I would try and diversify, but at the start of your career, you shouldn't. Now the game I'm playing is really a game of hiring the best people in the world. The reason I can do this is because I now have the ability to get the best people in the world to come and work with me. And this, for me, is a lesson that I wish everyone had told me day one when I started my first business, was that your outcomes won't be solely down to your brilliance, your ideas, and your hard work. I thought it was when I was 18. I thought where I end up in life was a consequence of my hard work and my good ideas. What I learned 3 years in was that the role of a founder is to hire the world's best people, to bind them with a culture that gets the best out of them, makes 1 + 1 = 3, and to set them a valuable mission. That is the fundamental role of a founder. Every company, every founder is a head of recruitment. Every company is a recruitment company. These sound like words that I'm saying on stage. In the last 4 days, I've spent about 15 hours doing recruitment. We have an inbox where we get, this month we've had, because I did this post on my LinkedIn, we've got 32,000 applications to join my company. I've spent every weekend in that inbox, about 4 hours a day, reading applications. Because I learned 3 years into my time in business, when I hired someone that was truly exceptional, truly exceptional, and then I watched what they did to my company, I realized that I'd been playing the wrong game. I thought the game of business was work as hard as you can and just hope that your ideas are good. No. Let's play out the thought experiment that anyone in this room had hired Elon Musk and got the best out of him. You would have had a Tesla. You would have been the founder of a Tesla, a SpaceX, a PayPal. You would be a trillionaire, right? That's obviously an extreme thought experiment, but there's other people out there that I've, not close to Elon, but great potential in the same way. And imagine if you hired them and got the best out of them. Imagine the value they'd create in your organization. When I think about my family office, which we think is about 150 million now, when I think about where the value has come from, I was saying this to Danny at dinner last night. It's this small group of people that I hired. The value of my family office probably derived from about 7 people that I managed to hire. And so why wouldn't I spend all my weekend trying to find an 8th person that is truly exceptional, that can drag us forward? That is really the game that no one talks about. And just to close off on that point, 3 years into business, I hired a lady called Katie Leeson. And not only did she bring huge value to my company, but A players, exceptional people, hire exceptional people. So of the 10 people she brought to my company, 9 of them ended up being the most valuable people in my company. And I won't say their name, but just to give you context, there's this other guy, let's call him Dave, who came into my company. And of the 10 people he hired, he was a C player, always caused problems. Of the 10 people he hired, every single one of them was fired. Every single one of them. And that's the value of an A player. They can, no matter what your idea is or your business or your project is, if you can invest the extra time, a disproportionate amount of time compared to all of your competitors in convincing these world-class people to come with you, even when you're young and you can't possibly fathom how you, as a 20-year-old, could ever tell them what to do and lead them, you'll change the trajectory of whatever you're doing. And I've got to touch on that because this is the thing that stops you doing it, is you go, oh my God, the salary, they're going to be paid 2 times everyone else. They're going to give you 50 times the value than a B player. And then the other thing that stops people doing it, specifically young people, is they think that person is so talented and so experienced, why would they want to come and work here? That's one of the big psychological barriers. The job of hiring anyway isn't to tell people what to do, it's for them to tell you what to do. And the minute you can get out of the way of your own ego and pride, you can step into your own success. And the minute I did that, my career and my life changed. I'm trying to find people to come work for me that I'm intimidated by, that will literally spar with me, and that will bring new thinking to our organization. You know? So many founders think the job is to be right, the job is to be successful, and they are 2 very different things. Great founders like Ben Francis from Gymshark or Julian from Huel understood at some point that the game is to be successful, not to be right. So they stepped down as CEO, both of them of their companies, and put other people in the CEO role because they knew that it's not about me having a nice title in my Instagram bio. It's about this thing called Gymshark being successful. And if it is successful, my Instagram bio is going to look even better. And so, yeah.
How do you identify these A players? Like, is there a specific question that you asked in the interview?
You get A players to interview them.
Okay.
That's what I do. Like, it's true. If you knew how rigorous my hiring process is for all of my companies, you'd again think we're insane. So for one person to join my company, about 7 people have to interview them. And I get the truly exceptional people in my business to interview them. I've created this whole hiring framework, which everyone in my team follows. And you walk in the interview, so we do a phone screening session. Once they get past the phone screening session, there's a setup of 7 people interviewing them. I've defined all of our leadership principles over here, which are our cultural benchmarks, then all of our competencies for that individual role over here with this hiring document. When you interview them, you're not allowed to walk out of the room and then discuss it, because then you stray into groupthink. You interview them, you go straight to the survey, and you put your feedback in about the person. We're isolating you from groupthink. No one's allowed to hire their own boss, because there's this thing called pick your boss bias, where you'll just interview someone that you like and that maybe will be nice to you. So I've thought about what you're hearing here, and just to give you another flavor, even once the person has accepted the job, you then have to have a process to keep them engaged, because about 5 or 6% of candidates drop out after accepting the job because they're swayed by their previous employer. So the interview process continues. You take them for dinner, you take them for lunch, you bring them until they're in the room. The reason why I've spent so much time thinking about this hiring process is because of what I said. We're all recruitment companies, and if you're competing in my industry, the fundamental game is I'm going to hire better people than you. We should treat the hiring process like a product itself. We should iterate on it. We should measure it. We should have someone responsible for it. It is the most important product. To prove that to you, I interviewed Walter Isaacson, who spent 2 years following Elon Musk, and then he spent 2 years following Steve Jobs before Steve Jobs died. And before Steve Jobs died, he was sat in Steve Jobs' back garden, and he said, Steve, of all these products that you've invented, the iPhone, the iPad, all of these things, what's your favorite product that you ever created? And he said, the team. Most important product I ever created was the team, the Macintosh team, that early team. That was the most important product I ever made, because the team is the source of the brilliance. It's the source of every idea you have. So if you want brilliant products, build a brilliant team.
Can't disagree. Fully agree.
You can tell I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I just don't think people think it's important. It blows my mind. People don't spend that much time on hiring, and they should spend maybe 10 times as amount of time on interviewing people and taking the time to make sure they're right and fighting for better candidates. And I don't care if we need the role filled today.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, there's been so many times in my companies over the last 7 years where we're going to lose a client unless we hire a strategy director. But I'm not hiring a strategy director unless we find a world-class strategy director. So the team gets this pressure, oh my God, we're like breaking at the seams, we need a strategy director. What I know is a bad hire might help you this week, but they're going to cost you 18 months. 6 months finding a candidate, 6 months realizing they're bad and putting them on some kind of like performance review, and then 6 months to find a new candidate. So one bad hire, because we desperately needed someone this week, is going to cost you 18 months. On average. I'd rather take 7 months to find a world-class person than lose 18 months.
Do you do the same when you're investing? Like what part of you do you tap into when you make an investment decision, the heart or the mind?
It's a combination of two. So you want to do your financial due diligence, but probably the most important thing, especially as an investor on Dragon's Den, which is the TV show, I'm not going to be able to understand all of these industries in the short amount of time I have with this entrepreneur. I'm not going to be able to understand the floristry business and the cupcake industry. What I can understand is someone's character. And when I take their character, I create an assessment of their character, and I compare it to what I know the world of business is going to inevitably put them through. I can see if there's a match there. I know business is going to tell them every week, every month that they are wrong. I know that there's going to be some days where most people that weren't insanely driven by passion would and should quit. I know all of these things are going to happen. So when I try and find character traits that match the inevitability of business, I'm looking at someone's humility. When the data says you were wrong, this is not working, do they stubbornly persist, or do they pivot, learn, and change? When they have that hard day where they should give up, is there something driving them that's so deep that there is no plan B for this person? They're going to continue to grace those hurdles. So I can look at their character, and that's a lot of what I do in the Den now. In my first year on Dragon's Den, I was trying to invest in ideas. I'm in year 3 now, I'm going into my 4th year, and I'm trying to invest in people's character. And I've spoken to sharks, the sharks in the US from Shark Tank, and they say the same thing. They say, my most successful investments, funnily enough, they go with people that have been through trauma. And because they're the most unbelievably resilient people of all. They're the ones that don't quit easily. They're the ones that, when something bad happens, Barbara Cochran, who's been on Shark Tank pretty much the whole time, said to me, she goes, when something hits their business and there's a problem, the people that haven't been through trauma or didn't have rough childhoods, who haven't experienced some adversity in their life, they typically go, oh my God, what are we going to do, Barbara? But on the other hand, the people that have been through trauma, they call Barbara and go, Barbara, this has happened, and here's the plan. And so Barbara says that those are the people you want to invest in, those that have been through adversity.
And by the way, this is, the same thing. It's always about the people. I've heard this from people investing in idea stage entrepreneurs, seed stage, and even people writing $20 million checks. It's always about the people, even at that level, and the character and what they've been through.
100%. A good idea with a bad entrepreneur is a bad investment. An idea you don't really understand or you think you don't really get with a great entrepreneur is a good investment. And I remember 18 years old, I had emailed a guy on LinkedIn, typed in the word investor and sent him an email, sent him a couple of emails back and forward, and he invested. Bear in mind, this was in my stealing pizzas phase. I was shoplifting food. He told me on email, I'll invest £10,000 in your company. £10,000 to me was like winning the Euro Millions. It was like hitting the biggest jackpot of my entire life. I couldn't believe it. I met him in London. He'd made the investment, he'd signed the contract. I'm this university dropout that's never built a website in my life, saying that I'm going to build this tech business. He sat me down in London. I remember the day so well because, and I said this on LinkedIn the other day, someone came over and poured my water for me while I was sat in this restaurant, and he saw my face. I was like, and he goes, you better get used to this. And then I was like, I remember the way. And then the dinner came to an end, and he turned to me and goes, do you know, Steve, I don't really know what your idea is. That's what he said to me, because I don't really know what your idea is. I don't really get it, this wall park thing, I don't really get it. He goes, and I'm sat there thinking, this guy's an idiot. He's given me £10,000, and he doesn't know what my idea is. And he goes, but I just think you'll do something good someday.
Yeah.
And I genuinely walked out of there, I thought, that guy's got more money than sense. I was like, one day I'm going to get to the point where I just invest in things and don't know what they are. And now, some 10 years later, I know exactly what he meant. I know exactly what he meant. I will meet exceptional people in the street, and I'll just get that feeling from them because you have a conversation with them and you go, God, this is an exceptional person. I don't really care what they do, but I want to put 250K into it. I want to invest in them over the next 10 years because they're going to figure it out. And, every seasoned investor ultimately arrives at the conclusion that you're actually just investing in people. So
I want to wrap up a little bit on your podcast. I assume everybody here has listened to your podcast. And a couple of questions on that. What makes a great guest for you?
Glucose goddess, of course. It's really a multifaceted equation to what makes a great guest. Now, how shall I approach this? So we have a bit of a scoring system, right? Which is, do they have deep expertise on something? Do they have a story? And they don't have to have all of these things, but we just want some of these things. Do they have an existing audience? Is the thing that they're speaking on, resonant to people at the moment? So is it relevant? But the most important thing of all of these things, and this is so important, is Steve curious about it? Now, I say this, and it sounds a bit obvious, but when you have a team of 40 people who all have different passions and interests, can you imagine the fight when their hero comes through the inbox and they want to meet them? And what you'll get in a Slack channel is, Steve, please have Kim Kardashian on the podcast. Please, Steve. That kind of thing. So very early on, I realized that when this podcast grows, it's going to undergo more external pressure to sway away from its founding principles, that I have to isolate the guest booking process to me and one other person. No one else gets a say. And the question is it's the same question that got us here. Is Steve interested in having the conversation? Am I curious about them or the subject? Because if I'm curious about them, we'll have a good conversation for 2 to 3 hours, which will make a great show. If I get people on the show just because they have 74 million followers and they're big in Latin America and it will help our Latin American audience grow, I will sway too far from the principles that got us here, and that will sway me to somewhere that I don't know. So when you're building something, there are fundamental principles that you have to protect that will come under fire as the thing gets bigger. And for me, curiosity, Steve's curiosity about this thing, is the most important principle on the diary of a CEO. And, podcast gets bigger. People will always say, Steve, I like those earlier episodes. I want more CEOs on the podcast. I want more this. I want more that. I want more footballers. Listen, there's lots of other podcasts to choose from. The only thing I can be sure of, the only framework that I can continue to be guided by, is my own curiosity. And if people don't like that, listen, There's other podcasts you can listen to. I have to keep following that. And Rogan did the exact same thing. Not one person is allowed to tell Rogan who can come on the podcast. He gets so angry. I watched a video of someone trying to tell him that. He says in the video, there's one person who decides that sits here, me. And this guy, Rogan, who's I respect tremendously, will sit down for 3 hours and have a conversation about anthills. Like anthills. Because that's what he wants to talk about comedy, about fighting. And if you do that for 14 years, it turns out that you'll cultivate a huge audience of people that are also authentically curious about the same things as you. You can basically build an audience in anything, but the way to keep that audience, I think, is being consistent in those underlying principles. And it's difficult, right?
And you get like some of these best people, you learn so much from them on the show. So what have you taken in and internalized and sort of applied that could potentially be advice as well for the audience?
Just everything. Like, I'm a different person from doing it. So if you said any word about any part of my life, if you said sex, relationships, if you said business, company culture, I could tell you the exact guest that changed my opinion on that thing and the lesson they taught me. So say a word and I'll tell you what I learned and who taught me it.
Okay. Wellness. Sleep.
Sleep. I mean, Matthew Walker, he's the world-leading sleep expert. And he taught me not just the importance of sleep, but the importance of great sleep hygiene. I'm staying in this hotel in Sharjah, and they have so many of the principles built in. Completely dark room. Making sure your circadian rhythm is routine is the most important thing. Your wake-up time is way more important than the time you get in bed. Keeping that consistent sets the course of the rest of your day. And really, the key to being healthy and having great sleep is routine. Doing the same things at the same time. Don't eat 5 hours before bed. Don't get a glucose spike. Right? Jesse taught me that on the podcast. You don't want to be spiking your glucose with cookies at 11 a.m. because the hotel in LA put the cookies on the minibar. You don't want to be doing that, trust me. My point here is that having these conversations with people and just listening has changed every part of my life. Every part of my life. One of the most important, lessons that I learned about happiness, which I always talk about, was from Mo Gawdat, who was the ex-head of Google. He actually lives out in this region. And he said, you're happy when your expectations of how your life is supposed to be going are met. So we tend to think happiness is derived from like material achievement or whatever it might be, but it's actually your own expectations of your own life. When my mother, we grew up in that village in Botswana, you'd see a hot bowl of rice make people euphorically happy because it met their expectations and sometimes exceeded their expectations. You go to Mayfair in London and you see a billionaire having a steak that he or she ordered as medium rare and it comes medium. Anger. All that is unmet expectations. My life has changed drastically from stealing pizzas. You can imagine how with that my expectations have been met and then been exceeded. And now I'm at a point where my expectations of my life are pretty high, and that is a problem. Getting on a first-class plane to fly to Sharjah and just rushing into the cabin with my laptop to do my work as fast as I possibly can, and not taking a moment to say to myself, Steven, you're on a first-class flight to the other side of the world, and there's a group of people that are going to sit and give you an hour of their time to listen to you speak. 10 years ago, you were stealing pizzas and going into restaurants and putting your hand down the back of the chair looking for coins. If you don't stop and take a moment to realize that your expectations are being radically exceeded in this moment, you will never be happy. And that is the case for all of us in most of our lives. Most of us, I would say the vast majority of this room are having your expectations of your life exceeded in this moment. You're living out dreams that you once had. And most of you haven't taken a minute to be happy about it. Because now you've moved the goalpost off into the future like a rainbow, and you're looking for the pot of gold over there. If your happiness is always over there, it always will be. And so I have to almost put these principles in my life to bring gratitude into my life. And one of them when I get on a plane now, as a ritual, is just touching the plane when I walk in, which is me reminding myself that this is incredible, that I'm about to get in this tin can and fly across the world. That's the because, for me, other than flying from Botswana, the first time I got in a plane and went on holiday on a plane, I was 25. And I couldn't believe it. And I was in economy, and it was the most incredible thing ever. And now I'm just rushing in and trying to get on the Wi-Fi as fast as I can. That's a sad life. You will be happy if you realize that your expectations are being met, and you'll be unhappy if you walk around through life thinking that your expectations are unmet. So that's the controllable element to happiness. And Mo Gawdat sent me on the journey of understanding that.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this special episode of Conversations with Loulou, live from the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival. I really hope you enjoyed it. As usual, don't forget to visit conversationswithloulou.com to look at all the other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to or watch this podcast, and give us a rating and a review. It really helps in getting the show discovered. Don't forget to share with family, friends, colleagues, and whoever can benefit from this content. I'll see you in a few weeks.